So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
What is it about Tom Brady and winning the Super Bowl? Is it his wife? She calls herself a good witch. And I've been talking to a lot of people lately about this whole idea of manifesting things. You wait for it, you ask the universe, you don't doubt yourself, you don't doubt the universe, and it will come to you. You will get it. We're going to be talking about self-manifesting and kind of dabbling in other religions and touching on yoga and so forth. But it's our weekly happy hour here on Trending. And we talk about things that people think make them happy, that could be maybe contrary to their faith, could be in line with their faith. You name it, we're going to be talking about calling out to the universe today. So if you're one of those and you have a question, a thought, a comment, you totally disagree with me, I'd love to hear from you. The number's 1-888-914-9149, or you could head over to my Instagram and send me a message. You can find me at Timmerie. If you just head over to relevantradio.com/trending, you can do everything there. You can listen live, download our app, sign up for your Lenten lessons. You can subscribe to the podcast and find me on social media. If you didn't hear, there's some happy news that was announced this Valentine's Day, which isn't always a happy day for people. It's kind of National Single Awareness Day for some. And I think a lot of people are really happy the day after Valentine's Day because the pressure is off. If you're married, you're dating, you fulfilled your duty of the one time a year. There's a tremendous amount of pressure to deliver on flowers, teddy bears. I'm not a stuffed animal person. Like, I don't get the whole teddy bears, especially for adults thing. I'm sorry, I don't. The pressure's off. We're very happy. It's Monday. Valentine's Day is over. If you totally flopped, make up a reason to give some flowers and some chocolate. Make up some random anniversary if you're one of those people who celebrates your 2-week and 6-month anniversary. Again, I'm laughing at you if that is you, but as the world says, you do you. Okay, the real happy news that came out this weekend, you may know this, I'm a lover of the royal family and all that news. A royal baby is on the way. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex can confirm that Archie will be a big brother. This is big news after Meghan Markle this past summer, in the midst of COVID, had a miscarriage. She lost a baby. It really impacted her, and she shared about her story and reached out to a lot of women who had similar experiences. It's a moment to pray for anyone who's struggling with infertility, having recently experienced a miscarriage. We pray for those who are going through similar experiences and pray that there's happy news for them, just like there has been for Harry and Meghan here. But here's the deal. I've been thinking a lot over the last couple weeks about this thing of manifesting what you want. We're going to touch on that in a little bit. But a couple years ago, back in 2019, you may remember me talking here on Trending about how Giselle considers herself a good witch. And Tom Brady was talking about how his wife has this pre-game ritual that she does and how she says things over him and how she has him repeat these mantras. She has rocks and crystals. And in fact, she even sets up an altar for him at the games. That's right. Tom Brady, multiple time Super Bowl winner. If I was a big fan of football in the Super Bowl, I'd probably be able to tell you how many times he's won. But I really, again, one of those things, I just don't care. You can fill me in. I know this guy is known so much so for his major victories. Football, especially for his age. And he has this gorgeous wife. The world's eyes are constantly on these two as the years go by. But it's really stood out to me the fact that she calls herself a good witch. Now, if you don't know this, they are practicing Catholics. In fact, practicing Catholics here in Southern California. I know people, in fact, you two, too, people who listen to this show. We have guests who go to the same church as them. 7 Super Bowls. I am being informed that he has won 7 Super Bowls now. That's incredible. Sometimes we have to ask the question, though, when there's great success like this, what's happening? Well, we've discussed before how sometimes when we sell our soul to different ideologies, we give ourselves over to something that's less than what we're called to as Christians. And so I think one of those areas that's become a very common practice has been this idea of manifesting things that we want, asking the universe for them. This is part of what Giselle practices, but let's talk a little bit more about Giselle and her story. She is actually well known. She was interviewed last year actually by Anderson Cooper, where she talks about how she used to suffer from a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. And she really needed to calm down and overcome this struggle that she experienced. And so what ended up happening is she started to get into yoga, the breathing techniques, and the meditation. She said it helped her to be a better mom. In fact, she started waking up before her kids and would start practicing her meditation routine. Hint, hint, a lesson to the question that I received on Friday that we discussed. How do you fit it all in when you're a mom? How do you fit in the exercise and the prayer? Well, whether you're Catholic, whether you're meditating with a Buddha, or you're meditating on the rosaries of the mysteries, sometimes you have to get up early. And this is something that Giselle has commented on herself. Something she practices in the midst of this is accepting things, making resolutions, and gratitude. In fact, interestingly, and we'll have to talk about this another time, Giselle talks about how she's actually not really a parent. She's just a guardian of her child. And that's her job, to be a guardian. Well, here's what I find interesting. Setting aside this guardianship as a mom, because it's a whole other topic in and of itself, Giselle is someone who is practicing things that don't jive with our Catholic religion. She's into the crystals, the rocks, calling out to the universe. In fact, she talked about how she's always been very, very open to the spiritual realm and to spirits, and has always felt very connected to them. In fact, she specifically said she's, quote, very trusting of the spiritual realm. And she's not just talking about God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and the angels that he sends to protect us. But she's talking about opening herself up essentially to what? The demons and evil spirits. And I know for some people this is a jump. They're like, I'm just Catholic, I pray my rosaries, I believe in my guardian angel, and let's leave it at that. But there's a real problem when we are naive enough to believe that just as much so as there is a kingdom of heaven, kingdom of saints and angels, well, there was a fall that took place. There's a war in heaven. In fact, in Revelation, we read about how when Satan, Lucifer, an angel, left heaven and rejected God, he took 1/3 of the angels with him. 1/3 of the angels with him. And these angels can prowl about the world just as Satan can, seeking the ruin of souls. And of course, they're using things such as yoga to appeal to mind, body, and soul to draw people out of their anxiety, out of their panic attacks, just like Giselle said that yoga drew her out of her own experiences. I can't tell you how many friends I have. Grew up in great Catholic families, went to great Catholic small universities. And boom, out of nowhere, they have discovered their way of life is yoga. Because it makes them physically feel better. Well, yeah, because you're actually exercising. Yeah, because you're actually breathing, and I've seen you holding your breath all the time. And well, yes, of course, you're praying to God who is your creator and has a purpose for you. But the problem is, at first, people who grew up with some sort of Christian or Catholic faith use this meditation and they start by praying to God. Next thing you know, they are kind of mixing yoga, which is a Hindu or Buddhist religion. They start practicing Hinduism and Buddhism with their Christianity. Next thing you know, the Christianity slowly starts to be sloughed off. You can't do both. You can do one or the other. There's no combo deal, as Karen, my producer, just said. And I think that this is the challenge because Giselle and Tom Brady are people who practice their Catholic faith or attend church. And so here's the confusion, I think, for so many of us. Well, what's wrong with practicing? Well, it does turn into one or the other. What makes us feel better suddenly becomes our God, because we live in a time where if something makes us feel good, we worship it. It becomes our idol. That's what we chase down day in and day out. But that has to change. We have to understand that there's a difference between something being an aid in our physical fitness and our healthy eating. And in fact, food has become a religion for many people. Foodies, we chase what feels good. We even call food porn. I cannot stand that phrase. I mean, I can't go there. Side tangent that I'm leaving behind. I'm getting off the soapbox and leaving it back there. Here's the reality. If you think about ancient Israel and you read most all of the Old Testament, what is it about? It's salvation history. And what are the stories that we so commonly hear? We hear stories over and over again, both in analogy and in actuality, about how Israel prostituted itself out, how Israel was unfaithful to God, using marriage-like imagery and descriptions. Why? Because what would happen? The Israelite people would adopt other gods and start worshiping these pagan idols. They'd start sacrificing to these various idols, to these various so-called gods, also known as evil spirits, which in fact you could talk to an exorcist, which exorcists are actually casting out of people. What did God tell people not to do? Not to marry foreign women. Foreign women who had foreign gods, who would bring those foreign gods into the marriages, into the type of worship that they participated in. And in fact, God would at times, because people had in ancient Israel multiple wives. I mean, talk about polygamy. Whew, that was some horrible polygamy in our past, right? And he would actually tell them to set aside which wives of their 500 wives and concubines, the ones who were foreign, practicing their foreign worship. Why? Because those wives even more so drew the Israelite people further and further away from God. Because when you get married and you love someone, you want to partake in what they love as well, or at least you should become interested or accepting and loving of what they do. This is why who you marry really does matter, and the habits that they do or don't have. And so if God told the Israelites not to marry foreign women because they would practice foreign religions, why are we saying that we can mix Christianity with Hinduism and Buddhism? I think the reason why we justify it, or we say that there's no crossover, is because we've gotten into this idea of self-manifestation. If you're just joining me, you're listening to Trending with Timmerie. And if you want to listen to the podcast, maybe share this episode. Maybe you have a friend, family member who's left Christianity because they started practicing yoga. They started getting into the breathing techniques. They started engaging in the manifestation and the meditation. They even grabbed their vision boards, which, listen to this. So I'm all about vision boarding. I think it's great to have goals. That's part of the reason why I'm talking about it here on Trending, because it's our weekly happy hour. And for a lot of people, they say yoga, Buddhism, Hinduism, the spirituality has made them really happy. Well, part of the reason why people say this has made them really happy is because they participate in what's called manifestation, manifesting things, self-manifestation. And in fact, there are guidelines for how to do it. You ask for it. You set it up. You ask for something specific. So you don't ask for a broken down car. You ask for a car that's a Pontiac or whatever it is that you want. And you throw it out there to the universe. And you believe that you will truly receive it. And you start working on particular steps toward getting there. But you trust the process, that the universe will provide you with that car. Or that you'll find $100 tomorrow. Or perhaps it's that you'll get that promotion at work. And so you're opening yourself up to the universe and what you're asking for. You're working toward it. Now, Oprah Winfrey is one of those people who really pushes the vision boarding. And vision boarding is fine. I want a particular hair color. I'm going to believe that one day I'll be a blonde. I don't want to become a blonde. But I mean, I could put it on a vision board. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. I know my hair lightened up after having the baby. But I mean, that's hormones, okay? Or I could believe it was the universe providing the blonde hair for me. So you can put things on your vision board. Have goals. Have a goal of buying a home one day and set it before you as a reminder. Actually have goals. So many people don't even have goals. So many people say, oh, I want to buy a house one day, but they don't think about the steps that will help them get there, such as I have to save for a down payment. I have to understand what type of house I can afford. I have to understand what my monthly payment would be and if I have enough money that I'm making to pay that monthly payment. And then you have to do all of the steps so that you can get there. And then you have to look for the house. You have to purchase the house. You have to go through the process of the escrow. You have to get the furniture. So it's one thing to just say, I want to buy a house, but it's another to see the steps and work toward it. That's part of what manifesting does, is it actually says you have to find and understand the steps and work toward them. But the difference between manifesting things and actually working towards something and trusting God's providence is that in manifestation, it can get pretty creepy. People will open themselves up to the universe and toward, ultimately, the spiritual realm that is not the spiritual realm of heaven and of the faithful angels and saints and their intercession. But it's opening ourselves up to the spirits that radically oppose our Lord Jesus Christ, who radically oppose the bloody sacrifice he made for you and I on the cross. That's what we're opening ourselves up to, and that's what is interceding to help so-called provide through the universe the things that we want. Don't be ignorant enough to think that a demon and Satan cannot intercede and intervene in your life. And, you know, it's funny. I started this conversation talking about Giselle, who calls herself a good witch. And I was listening to an interview earlier where someone was making fun of this evangelical man who was saying, she's a witch, it's a no for me, like this isn't cool, she's doing these pre-game things for Tom Brady. And they thought that this guy sounded crazy because the guy's like, what? Giselle just wants to help out in her husband's career and success. What's wrong with that? And I understand what the guy was saying, but you have to understand there's a real war taking place between principalities and powers, between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of Satan. And we know that God has triumphed, that the kingdom of heaven and those gates will not be knocked down. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't spiritual warfare and that there's not war for the battle of souls. In fact, this is why baptism is so important. I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she was baptized as a young girl and fell away from her Catholic faith by the time she was in high school. And she talked about how she really ended up having a lot of exposure toward yoga and manifestation. She started to practice some of these things. But how she just started to become a little freaked out as she'd continue to kind of look around at these various ideas of manifestation, and she started to see that it worked. And she said, I believe that because I was baptized, even though I wasn't practicing my faith, there was a deep sense within me that something was wrong here. And she started researching and understanding all these people who left Buddhism, Hinduism, practicing yoga and the spirituality of manifestation because they understood it was actually really messy, evil stuff. And that actually coming into their fullness of their Catholic faith was really important. And this all kind of touches on the whole idea of law of attraction. Positive thoughts attract positive thoughts. Positive people attract positive people. Positive wishes attract positive wishes toward you. Similar to karma, all of this falls in line with this sense of spirituality. Karma, what comes around goes around. Karma is not a Catholic thing. Yes, we can trust in God's justice. We can also understand when people do things they shouldn't do to others, when they're harmful toward others, often they don't receive a lot of charity in return. And here's the problem with karma. Karma dispels charity. It's contrary to charity. To say, oh, karma, like you deserve what you get. Well, let's go beyond karma. And let's be charitable. Go beyond just what is just and giving someone what they deserve. Let's choose to love them when it hurts, when they don't deserve the love that we have for them. All of this is in contrast to the idea of praying to God and understanding that when we pray for something, even when we have a vision board that we say these are our goals and this is what I have to work toward, and leaving it into the arms of our Lord, that's different from trying to manifest it with the universe. And that in fact, God will have a few different answers. A yes, a no, or not now. In fact, something I can share personally with my own family that's been a not now for a really long time is I've got news. My husband and I are moving to the Midwest. This California girl who's lived here, I guess close to 30 years now, is going to freeze and have to be de-thawed in time for the show every day. But here's how it came about. Because my husband had been applying for jobs, looking to change things in his career and in his work. And it's been a long journey of searching for a new job, making sure that he was on the path that allowed him to provide for a family and progress in his career. And I kept thinking as we were waiting and waiting for that job that of course we wanted to be in Southern California near our family, where we've grown up, or where I've grown up and lived all this time. Well, here's the reality. God's sending us to the Midwest, not the climate, not the state we want. But here's the reality. God says yes sometimes to our prayers. He says no other times, and other times he says not now. And we're called to cooperate in the plan God has for us, to discern where he may or may not be calling us when opportunities arise. We're called to abandon ourselves to the will of God that includes cooperating with what is good in the world, with what is best for our lives. And in fact, growth in the spiritual life really requires that we develop a sense of detachment from things that aren't of God, that we develop a sense of adapting to the will of God and the change that will come about, such as moving to the middle of nowhere. I keep joking, I'm being sent to Egypt as a new mom. I'm sorry, if you live in the Midwest, it's not the middle of nowhere. But we're coming back here during our happy hour. We'll discuss more of manifestation, yoga, and so much more. And in fact, Father Rocky's joining me a little later to talk about Lent. Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/Forester.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
So we've been talking a lot about manifestation and a problem when we trust that the universe will provide, that how we're really dabbling in a spirituality that is appealing to spirits, but not the spirits of principalities and powers, but the spiritual realm of the fact that a third of the angels were cast into hell. You may go, whoa, that's a lot for me. This ain't your Kool-Aid Catholic. It's a whole lot more than that here on Trending. So if you missed that part of the conversation, I really want to encourage you to go back and download this podcast, which is available every night, a fresh podcast. Listen on your run, on your way to work. Maybe on your way to work is that jog you do in the morning, since everyone's got a stay-at-home gym now in their stay-at-home order that we continue to live in. But here's the deal. I wanted to touch on this because I think it's really important. This is our happy hour, and this is why we're talking about manifesting things. We're the happiest when we go beyond just trusting the universe. We're the happiest when we trust in God's providence, that He truly does provide for everything that we need. I'll just give you an example. God has been so good to me in my life. He has provided me everything I need. I remember when I moved just before we got married, and there were all these pieces that we needed for our home. And things add up. The furniture that you need, the decorations. I mean, people are so generous when you get married. But I'd been living in our space a while before we got married. I needed a big bed. I needed all these different things. I went, God, I'm just going to trust you're going to provide for all of these items. I mean, I was working 70% of my time as a Catholic missionary, working in Catholic theology and all these things. Okay, Lord, I need a bed. Out of nowhere, someone had a casita and they had a guest bed. They didn't use it. It was brand new. They gave me a bed. Next thing you know, someone's like, I have a table. I'm an interior designer, and I have this table and chairs that are staged. They look like something from a French cafe. There I have a table and chairs. I needed a couch. I had a friend who really disliked her couch. She had gotten married not that long before. Her husband and her disagreed on decorations, and she said, here, take my couch. I can't stand it. And truly, our Lord has provided in so many ways. We need to not be afraid to ask Him, to trust in His providence. And yes, to work toward those things that we need, to be prudent with our money so that we can purchase the items that are necessary, but also trusting God's going to help us when we don't have what we need. He is our creator, and He created us with a purpose. So often when I kneel down in prayer before God, I start my prayer by acknowledging, you're the creator, I'm the creature. You have a purpose for me that is so much greater than the purpose and the type A personality and the perfectionism that I think that I have for myself and that I think I have for other people and their plan. Because there are sometimes those people who just love to tell everyone else what they should do with their lives. But ultimately, one of the greatest desires we have is to love and be loved. And we're searching for that unconditional love that only God can give us. We're looking for provisions in our life that only God can give us. And so here's the reality. Why does this matter so much as we're talking about manifestation, Buddhism, and Hinduism during our happy hour? Well, I was reading this study last week, and I shared a little bit of it with you on Friday, if you want to check out that podcast. But there's a study that came out about 10 key findings with regard to religion and what teenagers believe in practice versus what their parents believe in practice. It came out from Pew Research. And there were a couple of things that stood out, but one in particular in relation to today's topic. And that is that teenagers tend to be open to the possibility that there may be truth in multiple faiths, and that people can be moral without believing in God. And so this is the argument that is so often thrown out. Well, what's wrong with Buddhism and Hinduism and yoga? They're teaching a form of virtue. What's wrong with other religions, with Islam, with Mormonism? And I'm not going to jump through all of these. But one of the problems is that, yes, people can do good things, but they may not be doing them for good reasons. But they may not be doing them because it is right. They may believe in karma. What goes around comes around. That's not virtuous. That's doing things for the sake of getting them. We could even touch on how, with relation to this, that teenagers are open to the possibility that there's truth in other faiths and other so-called gods, that although this may be an approach of so-called no judgment and just respecting other religions and being accepting of everything, we have to understand that there is a God who created us and who has a purpose and who loves us. And here's what's wrong. When we don't believe that, we're going to be just like that Giselle who left home at 14 years old and struggled for years with anxiety and panic attacks. And what did she find? She found some sense of peace and healing in yoga that challenged her body to stay healthy, and breathing that relaxed her body, and meditation. All of these things we are called to in our Catholic faith. They're just counterfeit because they're not enough. They're missing the full picture. We are body and soul. And I think that this is the problem when we don't talk enough about the fact that we are body and soul. I think that we can do a lot as Catholics if we spoke more to the importance of physical health and talked about important ways to exercise. This is such an important thing in my heart and mind because I grew up as a dancer. I danced in high school with the Russian ballet company, the Kirov, in their summer program. I've taught Pilates, helping people with major injuries and other people just trying to stay healthy. The body matters because it touches on the soul. The two can't be separated. And so it's interesting and important that as teens are accepting of other religions contrary to what their parents believe, it's important that we understand they trust and they believe in them because they see it producing results in other people's lives. I can see in some of my friends that practicing Buddhism has produced positive results, helping with anxiety and depression, helping with physical fitness. But do I know that it's not leading them toward the one true God who is crying out for them? Yeah. And I think that that's what's important. Just because something's producing some good fruits doesn't mean that in and of itself it's good. And so as we've been talking about Giselle, it's important, Karen, my producer, just said that we have to pray for her, that the graces of her baptism, that we pray that she comes back to the fullness of the truth. Because she could be a powerhouse like so many others for good. And she's preaching what she believes with regard to the spirituality and this yoga and positivity and manifestation. She is truly preaching it, just like Oprah and so many others. That doesn't mean that it's good for our soul at the end of the day, at the end of our life, whenever that may come. If you don't go beyond religion, if you go past religion and say that it doesn't matter, there are other things out there. If you don't raise your kids with religion, if you don't pass it on, the world will pass on something else. To ask the universe and everything will be provided. Religion is what helps us cope with anxiety and stress. So does exercise. But some people are being sucked into this realm that appeals to body and soul because we're not doing a good enough job as Catholics of talking about this. I want to share with you a really, I think, important and neat set of stories. Having worked for years within the pro-life movement, having stood in front of that abortion clinic, being within the context and framework of crisis pregnancy centers where women come in who are so broken, so hungry. And I'm not saying hungry for food. They are spiritually parched for God. I've seen these moments where a woman will have come in having experienced sexual abuse or having been in a state of being pregnant outside of marriage, living a life of sexuality that was loose. And then she comes in, she asks these questions of the counselors. I don't even know what's right and wrong anymore. I don't know what's up and down. I've lost that sense. In fact, there have been moments where they've even shared because they've engaged in the most intimate act of what is meant to be the marital embrace with so many different people prior to marriage. There have been women who say, I don't even feel anything anymore. I want that back. Because we're not just a body, we're a soul. And at a certain point when your body has been so taken advantage of, the spiritual dimension of things that are good can be lost and confused. And so I was speaking recently to the director of a crisis pregnancy center over the last few days. And she said, Timmerie, I bought 2 cars this past weekend. I said, what? And she said there were 2 women who were abortion-minded, and it was a Friday. We know that the abortion clinics are open on Saturdays and that they are pumping abortions out and reaching out to these women. These women have abortions scheduled for the next day. They have pressure from their boyfriends. And she said, all it takes sometimes is just that one thing. She said, I don't do this all the time, but it just happened to be that this past weekend, that one thing that 2 women who were about to have abortions needed were cars. They didn't know I could give them cars. They didn't know that we have such generous donors at our crisis pregnancy centers that I can help get them a car by the grace and provisions of God. And so she bought 2 cars. It just happened to be that this is what 2 women who were about to have these abortions needed. One, their car broke down on the side of the road. They believed that they couldn't have that child. The parents would be so upset they're pregnant again. They didn't have the money to replace their car. They didn't have this, they didn't have that. All it took was a car to help them be happy and shoes to keep their baby. Now, on one side, we could be really upset that the baby's life was basically worth a car. I know that you and I cannot understand that, but this is where people are at, and this is why I'm talking about self-manifesting things, because we live in a culture where the material things that we have are what we believe will provide us with success, with happiness, but also with this, with security. That it took having a car for a woman to feel secure to have a child. So in part, understand that these crisis pregnancy centers are helping meet the culture where they're at. They're helping to give them the things that they need so desperately in their minds, they think, in order to continue on with this pregnancy. In order to continue on with believing in God. And you know something interesting? Both of these girls believed in God. But I commented, maybe it was a fluffy religion where we say, I believe in God, but we don't practice what he asks us to. And what he asks us to practice isn't always easy. God is our source of joy. God manifests because God provides for all that it takes. All that it takes to save those 2 lives, those mamas who are abortion-minded, whose babies are here today. I ask you to pray for these women. And pray that we have the hearts that can help accommodate and meet people where they're at, to talk about the difficult things, even if it's just a so-called sense of spirituality.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
We're back. Father Rocky will be joining me in just a moment here. He is our executive director of Relevant Radio, and it will be a joy to talk about the Lenten lessons and how we can be better prepared for Lent, how we can dive into Lent. Can you believe it? Lent begins this week. Ash Wednesday. Didn't we just do this? I remember being just maybe a week or 2 into Lent last year as our churches were closing down and everything was happening, and it was the Lent of a century, truly. And so, what will we do this Lent as we continue to see various challenges for our access to church? As we no longer have our soup suppers, maybe that was like your thing each Lent and we don't have access to soup suppers. And how will we find that community? How will we find opportunities for almsgiving, for charitable work that people would normally participate in during Lent? These are all great questions and things that we'll unpack. If you have a question about Lent, whether you're looking for spiritual readings, whether you're looking for how to pray the divine office, let us know. Let me know. I'd love to hear what I can do to journey with you this Lent to help give you the resources you need. Father Rocky's here with me to discuss the Lenten lessons that we're inviting you to join us in beginning this Wednesday. Father Rocky, welcome to Trending.
Hey, Timmerie, how are you?
I'm doing great. I have a baby now, Father.
Oh, man, I can hear it in your voice. You're as happy as can be.
Believe
are you
it or
sleep
not.
deprived yet?
Yes, I am right now.
Good. Well, that's all part of it.
This will be my Lent. This is all I need.
Is your baby healthy?
She's doing great.
This is terrific. Really, really happy for you. So your Lent will be all about being a mom, right?
That's a really good theme. I still haven't decided what I'm doing yet. I need to sit down with that pen and paper the next couple of days.
Look, being a mom, there's plenty of penance and mortification in that. It's built into it, right? Being a dad, too. So God bless you. And You know, I remember when our president last year at the Pro-Life March said, "Moms are heroes." I thought that was one of the best speeches a president ever gave. Never mind his own other personal deficiencies. So thank you. Congratulations. That's great news. And I want to tell all of your listeners about a wonderful promotion we have during this Lent, and it's called the Lenten Lessons on the Mass. A little backstory here. Back in 2010, here at Relevant Radio, everybody who was on air was asked or told to get on Facebook. And at first I was resistant, Timmerie, because I already had a phone, an office phone, and a home phone. So 3 phone numbers people could reach me at. I had a mailing address at home, a mailing address at work, and like 3 different emails. Like, I don't need other avenues for people to get a hold of me. I'm just like overwhelmed. And we got on Facebook, and about 2 years into it, I said, for Lent this year, I'm going to write a little lesson on the Mass each day and post a picture on it and teach people that. Well, it was well received. And then I forgot about it. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, Damon Schmidt, who runs digital media here, said, "Hey, what do you think if we send your Lenten lessons on the Mass out to our listeners by email?" I said, "Well, great, but I don't know where they are. They're probably buried in the archive of Facebook. I don't know how to retrieve them." He said, "Oh, well, I kept copies of them." I said, "You kept copies of them? Unbelievable."
They must have been real
How about
good.
that? Yeah, so he kept copies of them. So we sent them out, and I think the first year about 4,000 people signed up to get the daily email. And then last year they said, let's do it again, but let's add something to it. I said, okay, we could record them as audio files, and then about 40,000 people signed up for them. And this year they said, well, we can't do the same old, same old. I said, sure we can. Just do it again. No, we gotta spice it up. I said, no, you don't. Yeah, we do. I said, okay, well, we do. What are we going to do? Well, let's make a video of it. I said, oh, come on, that's a lot of work. And then I said, you know what? I've got 2 days next week, Monday and Tuesday. I'm in Green Bay. Why don't you get a film crew and I'll just walk them through the Mass and you edit as you want. Well, it turned out really well. Really exceeded expectations. I've never really worked with video like this before. The video I've worked with is usually, on a cell phone. And so they brought in the big camera, the lights, high-definition video. And so we've crafted 40 additional Lenten lessons in the Mass. You get one every day. They're about 2 or 3 minutes of explanation behind the scenes. What is the chalice? Why is it made out of gold? Why are those linens like that? What's that thing on top of the chalice? The pall, P-A-L-L. And so we go through all of that stuff. And we only got halfway through the Mass and we ran out of lessons. So I want to encourage everyone for Lent this year to sign up at Relevant Radio, relevantradio.com, and the app to get this daily email. And you can read the text and see the picture. You can listen to the audio file, or you can also listen to and view the 2 or 3 minute video, and you'll learn a lot. And the whole point here is the more you learn about the Mass, the more likely you are to live it. And if you live the Mass, you'll love it. And if you love it, you won't leave it. That's where faith is. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest challenges we have in the Catholic Church anywhere in the world is people don't know the faith. Right? So we have to teach. That's what Jesus said. Go out into the whole world and make disciples of all nations, all right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. That's the sacraments. Teaching them to observe what I've commanded you. Right, so one of the real important missions of the Church, especially as a priest in Relevant Radio, is to teach. Because you don't teach, how people are going to know. So that's what it's all about. I hope you sign up too, Timmerie.
I will. And I love something you just said, that you won't go to Mass or stay with the Mass if you don't live it. You need to learn to love what it is and understand what it is. And I think that that's so important, because we see so many people leaving their Catholic faith, or as we've been talking about today, dabbling in other religions to help make them happy or make up their spiritual cocktail and physical health cocktail. And so living these Lenten lessons out, I think, are so important.
Right. I suppose as a kid, a certain advantage to me is I served Mass at the parish. And so when you serve Mass as an altar boy, you're in the sanctuary, and you don't have to look over the heads of, 1,000 other people who what's going on. You're closer to the action. And so whenever I celebrate Mass for youngsters, I like them to be very, very close to the action so that you can see what's going on. This is one of the things that we found out when we did the live video feed of the Mass every day at noon when everything shut down. People were really focused on it because they didn't have any of those distractions. So that's what we're trying to do with these Lenten lessons of the Mass. I think the time to do is Lent, because usually in parishes they'll notice a big increase in the number of people go to Mass every day during Lent. I know that's certainly the case on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We get a lot of Catholics from the Midwest go down there to get away from the awful winter. You might have 800 people a day at a daily Mass in Lent. Like at my sister's parish in Marco Island, 800 people. Right?
Wow.
It's not like they don't have anything else to do. They're really hungry to know the Mass. And you know, the number one testimony we ever get at Relevant Radio, Timmerie, it's, I never learned so much about my faith. And I went to Catholic school for 8 years, or Catholic high school for 4 years. I've never learned so much about my faith. One of the reasons is you never had so much time to listen, because we reach you in the car, wherever you are, it's free and it's easy. We have great hosts on, great guests, and all the rest. I suppose my energy for promotion of knowledge of the Mass of the Eucharist goes back to sort of an aha moment. I don't know, it was 7, 8, 10, 12 years ago when the Pope at that time, Benedict XVI, came out with a new book called The Light of the World, Christ the Light of the World. And he was asked about renewal in the Church. He said all renewal is based on the liturgy and the Holy Eucharist. And then he wrote, or he stated, if it's true what we believe, that Jesus Christ is truly present in the Holy Eucharist, body and blood, soul and divinity, really, truly substantiated. If that's true, he said, Christ is really there, then the Eucharist is the event that's at the center of absolutely everything. That's quite a statement from a great theologian, Pope. It's the center of absolutely everything. Everything is everything visible and invisible. Everything is the whole course of the history of the universe, the whole course of the history of the human race, the whole course of the history of the Church. It's at the center of the family. It's the center of progress. It's the center of culture and education. That way, if you knock the Eucharist off the center of our attention and of our focus, then it has very bad repercussions for families, for life, for morality, for culture, for politics, for peace, and all the rest. And we've seen that before. One of the greatest centuries in human history is the 13th century in Europe. Flowering and flourishing of saints, right? St. Francis of Assisi and St. Louis of France and St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Benedict and many other great saints, and the beautiful churches they built, and the art and the music and the literature and all that. It was all centered about the Holy Eucharist, with the Church proclaiming the doctrine of the transubstantiation at the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215. Well, I'm giving you too much information. What I do want to tell your audience, Timmerie, is please sign up to the Relevant Radio app or relevantradio.com to get this free email every day. It'll help you get jump-started. You'll learn a lot about the Mass, because you can't love what you do not know. So remember when I asked you, Timmerie, what's this pilot's course you're teaching? And you were very kind. You didn't say, you dummy, it's not pilots, it's Pilates.
Pilates. We're still working on it, Father.
Right? I'm still working on it, right? So, I didn't have a clue, so how could I understand that? What's all this pilot's business,
Father, while you're with us, if you were to look back kind of to your younger self and say, here's this, when I was younger, I wish I knew this about my faith. I wish that this was something that I incorporated in my daily practice or weekly practice of my faith. What would that be that you encourage someone to do now rather than waiting till later to discover it?
Oh, I wish that by the time I was in 4th or 5th grade, somebody had helped me memorize the 10 Commandments and explain exactly what that meant.
Ooh, right? That's a good one.
Yep, absolutely. The Church has a great deal of wisdom in that, and you have a sense of something's right or wrong, but until people spell it out very clearly, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is weakness. Right? Mm-hmm. So the 10 Commandments that God gave to Moses on top of Mount Sinai are a magnificent gift that God has given to the human race. And Jesus did not come to abandon that or destroy it. He came to fulfill it with the Beatitudes. And so a lot of that. I think in terms of the Mass, I always knew that was important because our family always went to Mass on Sunday. It was a big deal. Mm-hmm. You had to dress up. This is when people dressed up. And then we'd celebrate, with special meals, all that. We never missed Mass on a Sunday. It wasn't possible, right? And from time to time, my parents would take me to the local adoration chapel to make a visit to the Blessed Sacrament. So kind of the liturgy part was good. The piety was good. But there was a lot of ignorance about Christian morality and the teachings of Christ. So that's, if I could go back to that age.
10 Commandments.
Yeah, the 10 Commandments, what they all mean and explain them, right? By the time you're in 5th grade. The Baltimore Catechism was very good on that. I never had that. It was pretty straightforward. And it made a lot of sense. And, when you finally hear the truth and see the truth, it's like you're let out of the prison of ignorance. Oh, yeah, that's right. You probably shouldn't do that. Or, all right, yeah, no, that makes sense. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, Father Rocky, so we're heading in toward Lent, and it's different. The struggles for men versus women. What are maybe one thing for each subset, men and women, that you would recommend to practice this Lent?
Oh, that's a dangerous question, Timmerie. I'm about to offend all the women who are listening to me. Oh, that's a very dangerous question.
It's okay.
So I'll answer that question, and we don't have much time here, as a story. A young priest once asked an older priest, he says, I don't understand women. How can I give them direction? He said, you have to help women understand that their major defect is envy, and they have to work on gratitude. And for men, the major defect is ego, and they have to work on humility. But that's not me saying that. That was an older priest saying that, so you can't blame me. What a question, Timmerie.
Wow.
Bold
so we're
question.
working on humility.
Men work on humility, women work on gratitude.
And gratitude.
By working on humility, we overcome pride, and working on gratitude, we overcome envy.
Those are words of wisdom from Father Rocky.
On your show after saying that?
Of course, Father. We're all about male-female differences here. We are totally not PC. That's Father Rocky, our executive director here at Relevant Radio. And he will be back again sharing his wisdom, but you can catch it starting this week, the Lenten Lessons. Click the banner on the Relevant Radio app and download it if you haven't yet, or go ahead and head over to relevantradio.com.